A very different weather pattern will be impacting the United States over the next 7 days, and this is going to bring the potential for some severe weather to areas across the Great Plains and perhaps the Midwest as we go into this upcoming week. In addition to that, we are also still watching the tropics where things could get active again, as we do have a new tropical storm in the central Atlantic Ocean, and a tropical storm could develop off the coast of North and South Carolina as we go into early next week. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather pattern across the United States over the next 7 to 10 days. We will begin with what's happening across the United States this morning, which overall there's not really much happening right now. We do have the remnants of Francine currently sitting over Tennessee, Kentucky, and also northern Mississippi, but overall that's dying out, and we're basically done talking about Francine at this point. The tornado threat was very underwhelming. We really did not have much of anything in the way of tornadoes out of Francine. We did have a low tornado risk yesterday. We had one on Thursday. We even had one on Wednesday. So far, we've really had no tornado reports. There's been basically nothing out of this, so really kind of crazy stuff there. But overall, there's a lot of moisture still sitting in the southeast, and we are expecting the potential for a tropical storm to try to develop at least over the next couple of days just off the coast of North and South Carolina, which we will talk more about here in just a minute. Back up in the northern plains in the Midwest, things are relatively quiet. We did have a little bit of storm activity yesterday back over North Dakota, but overall that's moving out. Eventually, we are going to see a new storm entering into the United States next week, and that will pose a threat for severe weather. Also, I do want to point out we have a tropical storm that's going to be going up the Gulf of California over the next couple of days. This is expected to weaken over time, but this is actually not far from areas like Arizona and New Mexico. That should bring a little bit of moisture up into areas like southern New Mexico and also parts of Texas, which that should allow for some showers and maybe even a couple of storms in Texas as we go into the weekend. Now, here's what we're looking at for the weather pattern over the next several days with the jet stream, and this looks at the upper level winds, giving us an idea of the weather patterns happening across the country. As we go into the beginning of next week, things are going to stay relatively active near the surface back over in the Carolinas. We're going to show you more on that here in a second, where a tropical system could develop. But the big story, I think, next week won't really be as much as that tropical system that might develop. It's actually going to probably be this large trough ejection that's going to be coming over the Rocky Mountains. And the reason why this is important is because we are likely to see a return of severe weather across the Great Plains, especially from Oklahoma back up into North Dakota. Now, it's uncertain exactly where we're going to see severe weather and the magnitude, I think, but I do think we have a pretty good idea here that we are going to have a negatively tilted trough, which when we get negatively tilted troughs like this, they do bring an elevated threat usually for severe weather, as they are pulling tons of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, and they also create more spin throughout the atmosphere. And that's a big key as we go into the early and middle of next week across parts of the northern and central plains. Now, as we go into Wednesday into Thursday, that trough will move up into Canada. Right behind that, though, we are going to see another large trough move across the Rocky Mountains. This one might be a bit bigger of a deal, because if this one develops, we could see this go further to the east, and it actually might bring a bit more of a meaningful threat for severe weather to areas maybe even in the Midwest and as well as back through the northern and central plains as we go into the later half of next week, sometime between Thursday and Saturday. So this is a big deal, in my opinion, when it comes to the potential for severe weather. And don't forget, we are going into our second severe weather season across areas like the central and southern plains, and even parts of the Midwest still deal with severe weather during this time of the year. So don't let your guard down as we go into the rest of September. Here's the instability over the next several days. This is basically giving an idea of how much energy there's available for severe weather as we go into next week. And I think the area that we'll be watching for on Tuesday will probably be back up in the northern plains. I think by Wednesday and Thursday might be kind of break days, but I think as we go into Friday and Saturday, we could get a few more organized threats for some severe storms back anywhere from the Midwest back into the central and maybe even southern plains. Now, here's the future radar for the next several days. So as we go throughout the weekend, it's going to stay active in the southeast with plenty of showers and thunderstorms. High pressure will build back up in the northeast, so things are going to stay dry up there. And unfortunately, Ohio, which is in a pretty big drought right now, is going to continue to stay very dry over the next several days. This is by the time we go into Monday, the European model does start to indicate a tropical system attempting to develop just off the coast of the Carolinas, and this will eventually just move northwest right into South and North Carolina if it does develop. But the thing that's really going to be the biggest deal with this is the amount of rainfall it's going to bring. If this just sits off coast for a couple of days, it could literally dump 3 to 6 inches of rain in some areas, so that's a big deal. Right now, the European model not indicating much of any intensification, though. It looks like it might just be a tropical depression or maybe just a low pressure system. That's what at least the European model thinks right now. At the bare minimum, though, if you're anywhere in the mid-Atlantic, a lot of rain is very possible between Sunday and Tuesday evening. returning. Once we go into Wednesday, we're going to watch for the potential, or really late Tuesday night, we're going to be watching for the potential for severe storms anywhere from the Texas Panhandle back into the northern plains. Once we go into Wednesday, we'll be watching for that trough to move into Canada. That should basically allow for most areas in the United States to remain severe weather free on Wednesday. Once we go into Thursday, we'll be watching for that next trough to move across the Rocky Mountains. Probably not going to see much severe weather either Wednesday or Thursday, but by Friday, that should be the return of more severe weather to areas in the Midwest and then back through the Central Plains. And then once we go into Saturday, we might see something a bit more robust develop, but it's going to depend on where this trough is exactly located and how intense it is. But right now, the European model indicating plenty of showers and thunderstorms anywhere from Texas all the way back into Wisconsin and even back up into Canada. And then once we go into the beginning of the following week, things become pretty uncertain at this time. You might be wondering, how much rainfall could we see over the next 7 to 10 days? Well, look at the southeast and the east coast. Those areas are going to see a lot of rain. Now, the remainder of what we're seeing down here in the southeast is mostly going to be from what's left of Francine, which is mostly going to fall today and tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. But this area of rain over here on the east coast near North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware, many areas will pick up between 2 to 4 inches of rain. And near the coastline, I could see many areas picking up between 3 to 6 inches of rain as we go into Sunday through even Wednesday. And then as we go into the rest of the week, closer to the weekend, it looks like that rain activity will start to pick back up again across the northern and central plains as some rounds of storms, which could be severe, will be returning. And look at the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. Little goose egg for most areas. Doesn't look very active, at least if you're in Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, or even Ohio at this point. Things could change, though, as we go later into the weekend and maybe early the following week. But again, that remains pretty uncertain at this time. The temperatures across the country for the next 7 to 10 days are going to be mostly above average, unless you're back down in the southwest or near the west coast, where there will be a cold air mass building behind those two troughs that we're going to have. That'll allow for some colder weather, but on the flip side, warm air is just going to build across the entire Great Plains and even east of the Great Plains as we go into the middle and end of next week. And even by the weekend, things still look pretty warm. Now, again, if we have a large trough that develops, moves over the Rocky Mountains into Canada, that could allow for colder air in the northern and central plains and perhaps even for the entire Great Plains. But again, this is still over 7 days out. Things could definitely change between now and then. Now, the temperatures over the next several days will be pretty normal for this time of the year, at least for Sunday afternoon. Many areas in the 80s back in the Midwest and Ohio Valley, 90s in the Texas area, and then anywhere back in the southeast in the 70s due to Francine and leaving plenty of cloud cover down there. Once we go into Tuesday, look at the temperatures on the west coast and even in the southwest. Areas like Phoenix, Arizona will finally get a break from the 100s that they've been dealing with forever now. It looks like we'll be down into the 90s and 80s for many of those areas, but again, Great Plains going to start to warm back up again. Look at this, by the end of the week, by Thursday afternoon, we're going to be talking about temperatures in the 80s as far north as Canada. So things are definitely going to start to warm back up again. Climate Prediction Center on board with this forecast, indicating below average temperatures are likely in the southwest, basically anywhere west of the Rocky Mountains. Midwest Ohio Valley back into Texas, looking at above average temperatures in the 6 to 10 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. Now, in terms of rainfall, we are going to be looking at above average precipitation more than likely across the northern, central, and even southern plains and across the Rocky Mountains. And unfortunately, dry weather is going to continue for the northeast and back through the Ohio Valley. It's unfortunately if you're in a drought. If you're not in a drought and you just want some great weather, looks fantastic if you're in those areas. It's not really much rainfall is expected over the next 7 to 10 days. Now, the tropics are not super active, at least for mid-September, but there are a couple areas that we're looking at. Again, we have one middle ground area of development just off the coast of North and South Carolina. Medium chance of developing over the next couple of days as it just flirt basically with North and South Carolina. And then we also have Tropical Storm Gordon. Where is the lamb sauce? Well, it's going to be going to the west. We're currently looking at a tropical storm over the next couple of days. It's going to weaken back down to a tropical depression as there is going to be some wind shear and dry air. But as we go into the early to middle portion of next week, we are expecting this to intensify back to a tropical storm. After that, it looks like it's going to be turning back off to the north. Still a low chance this goes to the west, but as of right now, I'm not really too concerned here for the United States. By the way, this is our other tropical storm in the Pacific Ocean that's going to be going up the Gulf of California. Right now is a tropical storm, but as we go into the later half of the weekend, this is going to become a post-tropical cyclone as it continues to move to the north. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below. Subscribe if you've not already.